Okay, Bruce. Let's go to work. So, I want to talk about something that I was reading on Twitter yesterday. There's a Twitter user called David Hines, and he's got several thousand followers. I don't know what his background is, but anyway, he did a tweet storm regarding. Well, he did several tweet storms. I guess he recently read a book by Brian Burroughs called Days of Rage, and I guess it was an examination regarding the Days of Rage protests and Days of Rage call to action in 1969, and I guess what came out of that beyond that, with the Students for a Democratic Society eventually becoming the Weatherman and the Weatherman Underground, or maybe they were different groups. I don't remember, because he was basically giving a synopsis of the entire book. He did it over several tweet storms, and he was just basically showing that back in the 1960s and 1970s, I'm not sure if everyone's aware of this or not, but there were a lot of bombings in the United States. There were a lot of people engaging in terrorist activities in the 1960s and 1970s in the United States. When you think about terrorism, prior to 2001, you think, the IRA, right? But yeah, no, in the United States, there was the Weatherman Underground. There were lots of terrorist groups operating in the United States back then. And so Days of Rage is an examination of that entire period, 1969 onward, decade of the 70s. I was a kid then, and I'm raised in Canada, so, I don't really have any recollection of that, but I guess this was a thing. It was going on, it was big. So anyway, he goes through this tweet storm, several tweet storms, that is an examination of Brian Burroughs' book, Days of Rage. And then he goes on and he makes this other tweet storm, this David Hines, about Civil War II. Basically, what we saw in the 1970s is going to happen again, and it's already kind of happening in the United States. He's saying right now they're in a cold civil war. That is, there are two basic mindsets, right? In the United States, there are righties and lefties, and he says that it's going to erupt into violence, probably starting with the inauguration of Trump in like 5 days. By noon on Friday, he's going to be president. But the Disrupt J20 movement, he's putting out there the idea that there could be lots of violence there. I don't know what it's going to be like, but he's saying that this could spark the whole beginning of Civil War 2.0 between lefties and righties. Anyway, I'll link to the tweet storm in my description because I think it's worth reading. It's like, I guess there's this thing now, this app or whatever, that allows you to take a bunch of tweets and arrange them chronologically or in order so that you can basically read a story. And that's what he's done. I think it's called Storify or something. Anyway, I'll link to the tweet storm about Civil War 2.0. Now, one of the things that he was talking about in Civil War 2.0, a lot of people think that, well, if the left and the right ever went to war, the right would win because, they have all the guns. And, they have a militia mindset and yada, yada, yada. And he's basically saying that's BS. And I'm inclined to agree because people on the right don't tend to work in groups, right? They tend to be liberty first. They tend to be thinking, I need to have these guns to defend my liberty, not the liberty of my fellow citizens. I'm sure they think that way as well, but anyway. I'm using a new mount, by the way, so if there's a lot of shaking on this, it's because I'm using this new mount. I might go back to the old mount. Even if it shifts, it doesn't shake all the time. So anyway, so he's saying that's BS. When you look at what the Weathermen did, what SDS did, what the Black Panthers did in the 70s, they're way more organized. And they have, teams of lawyers at their disposal, and they've got a compliant media. They've got a media that basically just sort of accepts that, violent protests or protests from the left are going to turn violent. Oh, well, that's just what they do, and the media tends to use weasel words. They'll call them, demonstrations as opposed to riots. They'll call them, they'll call the burning of buildings or the smashing of windows non-violent property damage. Can you believe that? So throwing a Molotov cocktail at a store, setting it ablaze, is, as long as no one's inside, no one gets hurt, it's considered non-violent property damage. I'm sorry, but throwing Molotov cocktails is violent. Anyway, so he's saying that, basically the left have a compliant media. The left have been doing this since the 70s, and the left are well funded. And so it wouldn't be so easy for the righties to just say, basically, they have all the guns. There's nothing stopping the people on the left from getting guns as well. The Second Amendment is a double-edged sword, right? It's guns for anybody who wants them, not just people who agree with you. So, anyway. I mean, if you look at what happened at UC Davis, and the thing is, nobody gives a rat's ass when it happens. And they have a tendency to blame the people who are the subject of the riots, right? If you look at what happened at UC Davis, Milo went to speak there on Friday. I was looking forward to, watching the speech because Martin Shkreli was going to be on it. Anyway, it had to be canceled because protesters became violent. They became, they started throwing stuff, they started breaking stuff, they started attacking people, and so the university shut it down. Now the university says, "Oh, Milo canceled." No, that's not true. They shut it down. Anyway, and basically the press just kind of give it a pass, and they deflect the blame to whoever it is they're protesting. So, because Milo Yiannopoulos is a despicable character. It's kind of mind-boggling that free speech is no longer a liberal issue. Free speech is not considered something that's very important. Anyway, so yeah, I'm inclined to agree with David Hines' assessment of what it will be like. Go and read it because it's worth reading. It's like 240 tweets long, but it's worth reading. And you can get through it very quickly because you're just reading, tweets of 140 characters less. But it's got me to want to get the Brian Burroughs book, Days of Rage. It's inspired me to pick it up, so I'm gonna order it. Anyway, so yeah, his assessment is that basically it's not going to be so easy as righties just taking up arms. What's going to happen is, if there is violent outbreaks, it's going to be, the people on the right are going to be seen as Nazis. The people on the left are going to be seen as, the good, virtuous ones. And the point is that, liberals have been calling people on the right Nazis all along, right? So at some point it's going to be like, well, you call me a Nazi anyway, so why should I care? Why should I care that you call me a Nazi? So I may as well be violent. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, what's the punishment for? He related it to a story from ancient Chinese history. But I'll let you read that in the tweet. But if the penalty for being on the right is to be labeled a Nazi, and the penalty for engaging in violent action against your enemies is to be called a Nazi, why would you just be happy with just standing there and taking abuse. And I don't mean verbal abuse. I mean when there's protests and there's actual violence breaks out. Being called a Nazi is the least of your problems, right? You may as well. What are you supposed to like take a brick in the face because you're afraid that someone will call you a Nazi if you fight back? So anyway, but he was talking about how the left are more organized. The left will engage in campaigns of trying to get people fired or trying to get their businesses shut down. They already do it, right? Anybody they disagree with, they have to be not only deplatformed, they have to be, dehumanized and destroyed. Their livelihoods destroyed, everything else. So I was thinking, you think about people on the right, and who are they? They're working Joes, right? They're regular schmoes who have jobs, generally in the trades, or they own small businesses or what have you, right? So whereas in the 70s the left would target businesses that they didn't like, and they would set off bombs where they weren't necessarily interested in taking lives, but they wanted to make a point, right? So they would blow up some newspaper that was friendly to their opponents, right? And now they're engaging in the whole, let's get the business shut down, let's boycott and divest, let's destroy, this person's reputation, his career, that kind of thing. Well, the right-wing people can engage in that too. They did it when they were the moral majority back in the 80s, and they would, engage in boycotting campaigns and engage in, telephone campaigns to attack creators of music and comic books, video games, and really raise up a stink. But their activism was a means to an end, right? They wanted to get something done. They weren't necessarily interested in harming their opponents. Not so on the left. They want to destroy their opponents. Their opponents are morally inferior, right? So they need to be destroyed. Anyway, so what I was thinking was, people on the right, because they work in the trades and they work, as air conditioning guys and electricians and plumbers and stuff like that, they can engage in some sort of guerrilla warfare to ruin a business, right? So think about this: you're an electrician, and or say you're not an electrician, say you're a plumber, and you're called out to go and fix somebody's home who is a piece of crap who engaged in violent protest and threw a brick through a building, because they got arrested ultimately and their faces will be posted, so eventually they'll be known. So you go to their home, you go to their business, and while you're there repairing whatever it is you're repairing, you unscrew a faceplate in a wall socket and you put in some fish guts or some chicken guts in a little bag with a little hole in it. So eventually it starts to rot, and then eventually it just stinks, and it gets so overpowering that you can't stay in the place, and you won't know where it's coming from. You'll have no idea where it's coming from, right? Anyway, it's just a funny little thing I thought about. But anyway, I recommend you go take a look at the tweetstorm. Like I said, I'm going to link it in the description, and I'm going to pick up that book, Days of Rage by Brian Burroughs. But yeah, you should follow this David Hines guy on Twitter. He's got some really interesting tweets. And if you feel you have the time and you want to, go and look at his entire tweetstorm about his sort of synopsis of Days of Rage. I think he's got ultimately 4 little collections of tweets in his assessment of it. But yeah, it's not that hard to read. It's pretty quick to read, but it's worth reading anyway. Especially if you're concerned about what's going to happen over the next couple of years. But anyway, there's more to it than that in regards to the Civil War thing. He's talking about Civil War 2.0, and I wish I could get into it, but I got to go to work. I got 10 minutes before my shift starts. So yeah, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, and join my Facebook page if you want. And yeah, take care.